Let your abusive boyfriend assault me? Get evicted.
After high school, I'd moved in with a friend and lived there for about 5 years. He got married, and he and his wife had a baby. And suddenly she didn't want to share a house with a gay man and his boyfriend. This isn't really part of the story but a bit of backstory. Anyway, one of my best friends lived across the street from me and told me she had a coworker who needed a roommate, and gave me the woman's number. I called the next day and went to see the place with my boyfriend. So here's where it starts. The woman, let's call her D, and her boyfriend, John, were ecstatic to meet us because they really needed the help. Also, they were both bisexual and D hinted that John could experiment with us. We all had a good laugh and my boyfriend and I moved in within the week. The first red flag was that they were not on the lease. Their old roommate was, but he had moved out 6 months prior, leaving just his cats with the understanding that when he got settled into his new job and residence, he would send for them. D had a very aggressive dog and so all the rooms were baby gated so that the cats could escape if it chased them. Anyway, I told them I wasn't comfortable not being on the lease, because subletting is illegal here. So we got a hold of the old roommate who had management sign a new lease with just us. But that came with an agreement that the electric had to be in one of our names. D's credit wasn't good enough to have it in her name, so we had it put in my name. I got a local charity to help me pay the $1,200 electric deposit and paid $800 of it myself. D and John fought every day, loudly, and would often have even louder sex after. So my boyfriend and I mostly stayed in our room and would play video games to cover the noise. It was bearable as their room was across the hall and the room next to ours was empty aside from the cats. D also worked at a place that rhymes with hall fart, so we'd get groceries together on her day off. Eventually though she asked if she could just get my groceries after work, so I let her keep my food stamp card since she knew what I normally bought. I worked as a 24-hour in-home care provider 2 days a week. A 48-hour straight shift. 2 days a week of no sleep and lots of care and cleaning. When I got off work I would just come home and sleep for a day and then get on with the weekly routine. D would often have me do dishes, which I suspected weren't all mine and my BF's, but whatever. As soon as I got home, or bitch at me to clean the living room even when it was obviously her mess. John eventually lost his job and D's attitude got really bad. My BF and I did our best to keep up with the housework and not complain because we figured they were having some rough times. Then D started accusing John of cheating on her all the time. They broke up. John moved out, and it was just us 3 for a couple months. I messaged John on Facebook to find out what happened and he told me he'd asked D if he could hook up with me and my BF and she shut him down. Then accused him of cheating on her with every person he talked to, even his coworkers. He was fired because she was fighting with him about it and made him late to work. D then gets a new boyfriend. Let's call him Andy. Andy was on probation for beating his ex-wife, and was a total stoner. We thought he was pretty chill at first, aside from the fact that he would often play video games naked on the couch while smoking pot. Just because we're gay doesn't mean we enjoy the view. We ended up moving our TV to the living room because their TV quit working. And then Andy started hogging my video game systems. It wasn't a huge deal as I had multiple and I had a second TV, so I just played whatever he wasn't playing in my bedroom, or I would play one of my handhelds. After a few months though, things went downhill fast. Andy and D started becoming night owls and smoking pot whenever they were awake. Things started going missing and they blamed it on my friends. Then I started getting less food every month to the point I had to eat at my sister's house once a week just to keep my weight up. Then Andy and Dee locked the indoor cats outside while I was at work, and we don't know what happened to them. Andy tore the door and door frame out of the bedroom behind mine and turned it into his own personal gaming den. Dee and Andy started having very loud sex in said gaming den, keeping me up at all hours of the night. My mother died and my boyfriend and I left town for a couple weeks so I could grieve in peace. When I came back, I went straight to work. I got off shift and was listening to music on my phone, which didn't have a headphone jack, when I walked in. Andy stormed out of their room furious that I had woken them up at 2 p.m. He threatened to beat the shit out of me, threw a few punches at me, and I yelled at Dee to get him away from me or I would move out. She said, "I don't want you here," so my BF and I packed some bags and went to my sister's. We came back with a truck to get the rest of our things and Dee wouldn't let us in. I called the cops and she was forced to let me get the rest of my stuff. When I got back to my sister's, I realized that Dee had stolen a lot of my things. Not just from what I had around the house, but also out of my storage boxes in the garage. I found out from one of her coworkers that she and Andy had also been stealing video games from her work and selling them to the local game store. They'd been stealing stuff, selling it, and blaming my friends for a couple months. I was mad, but the worst was yet to come. I called the electric company to see about having the electricity put in Dee's name, but found out that I couldn't because the bill wasn't current. We owed $1,200 and I'd been paying my half. I was livid. Now for the revenge. I told the company to shut it off and that I'd pay the bill in payments. The next day I went to the managers and asked to be let go from the lease. I told them about the Andy, who was not on the lease, and how he'd assaulted me. They let me off the lease immediately as it was a matter of safety. I also told them that the electricity would be shut off in a couple days as it was in my name. This was a lease violation and she'd have 48 hours to get the power back on or be evicted. They served Dee her eviction notice the day the power was shut off. I also called her work and told them to check the security cameras during the times she was on shift, and she was fired for theft. A couple years later, I found out what happened to Dee. She lost the house and her job and she'd been forced to move back to her family. She had a baby with Andy and then he abused both of them so badly that he went back to prison. She had to get a restraining order and was a total pariah in the workforce since she had theft on her record. Play stupid games. Get stupid prizes. Dee. As much as I want to say she had it coming, the ending of this was incredibly sad, especially abuse to their child. Wow, her life devolved quickly. Seems like the first boyfriend was a pretty cool dude who called it quits because of her crazy.
Those is poor cats frown.
Sounds like some Jerry Springer type shit, lol. The worst part of this story is someone working 48 hours a week in a skilled and difficult job, needing food stamps to keep their weight up. This country is fucked. Dee is really Karen here. Thank fuck Andy is in prison. I would like to stab them both for putting indoor cats outside when the cats weren't theirs. Who does that? Hopefully the old roommate came back for his cats and beat the shit out of Dee, Karen and Andy before he went to prison for doing that. You need to edit your posts and use proper names, as initials aren't allowed. Dee, you dumb ostrich. In my opinion, you fucked up by not pressing assault charges. Whenever you're assaulted, press charges. You never know when it's a repeat offender, and who you might be saving by locking them up, no matter how temporary it may be. Bro. This story gets better and better. Wow. I can only fantasize about having this kind of revenge. I honestly wish you got more out of it. That sounds so horrible. This is why I would rather starve than get a roommate. Poor kitties and poor baby. Good story, but I think I want them to hurt more and know why. Did you ever get compensated for the stuff they stole? How can a job expect someone to work 48 hours straight without major fuck-ups? Is it really that difficult to schedule more than one shift every 3 days? I got a local charity to help me pay the $1,200 electric deposit and paid $800 of it myself. Good Lord. What the hell is an electric deposit? Real good story.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.